Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Dawn Stone. I'm the Director of Community Impact and Equity Initiatives at the Center for Nonprofit Management here in Nashville, Tennessee, where we amplify the voices and the work of nonprofits around this amazing city and state. I am happy and elated to be a part of an amazing group of panelists today that will talk about just us. Justice in our lovely state and justice in the city. What does justice mean to you? So I've asked you to sign in with who you are, and we will have this as a very interactive 2-hour stint. Now, if we run out of conversation, we will end the story and give you the gift of time. But we want this to be in a space where you can ask great questions, get responses to those questions, support one another, and also move forward with action. So the panelists that we have here today are by far ones that are going to bring you not only the people perspective, lived and learned experiences, but also talk about ways that we can move the needle when it comes to justice in our country. As many of you know, we have a very big opportunity here. There's a lot of stuff going on in our spaces, and we are going to talk about those spaces. But before I get into those spaces, let me acknowledge and open this place in a good way. So I'm going to start with my land acknowledgements. So here we go. I have to make sure I don't miss anyone. So give me 1 second here. All right. I want to acknowledge my gratitude for being able to live and work on the sacred ground belonging to our native ancestors of the Cherokee Nation, in addition to the Chickasaw, Creek, Natchez, Shawnee, and Yuchi. May my work in this space demonstrate my commitment to justice, equity, truth, and peacemaking through shared storytelling and rituals shared from my Indigenous and African roots. We at CNM are committed to equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. We want to thank CNM, our speakers today, our ancestors, living and past, for bringing truth to light to this work. I want to thank all of you for being here to lean into the knowledge, learn, unlearn, and relearn some things to reverse the curse of systems of oppression that continue to prevent liberation of marginalized people around the world. Thank you. All right. So the next part of this is really going to be an introduction. And I could do no justice when it comes to introducing our powerful list of speakers for today. I want to first ask that you popcorn, right? So I will hand the torch off to Miss Stacy Brooks to start us off with an introduction of who she is, why she's here, and then she can hand it off to another speaker.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Dawn, for inviting me to this group. My name is Stacy Brooks, and I am the Senior Director of Growth and Development for a nonprofit called Persevere. And honestly, the reason I am here is because I am the population that we serve. I am that individual that was incarcerated. I am that individual that was broken. I am that individual that lived with so many years of trauma and codependency and abuse. And so if I had a goal in life, it's to be a voice for the voiceless. Rochelle is not only my best friend and my spirit sister, but we call each other Grit and Grace, because it takes both of those to really kind of push through where you were, where you are, and where you're going. Persevere works with individuals in 4 different prisons across the state. In fact, I have a class that's joined us, and we've been doing this work since 2019. We are in the community, and I'm going to point out Jabari, who has also joined us. who is one of our 2 Gen participants that is now working for us. He is teaching at one of our sites, and then he is also working through a work release, not a work release program, but a work experience program with us. And so that's who I am. And gosh, I'm excited about today. I can't wait to hear from everyone. And so I'm going to pass it on to Ron Johnson.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much, Stacy. I am Ron Johnson, and I am the Community Safety Coordinator here in Mayor John Cooper's office. It's been 1 year and 1 week I was appointed to this position. Describing who I am and what I do, it's a one sentence. I am what I do, and I do what I am. I guess I am. And I know people may think, okay, but that is really who I am. I really believe that it's going to take us all to do whatever needs to be done in our city, in our state, and in our country for any of the changes that we want to see. And we have to be the change that we want to see in order for change to be evidence to what it is that we want to try and accomplish together in our city. And so my job as a community safety coordinator is to do what we're doing here, is to bring people together. Don and I, we call ourselves Batman and Robin, or anywhere you've seen the 2 superheroes, Wonder Woman and Superman, or whatever you want to call it, we're going to do our very best to try and protect and serve our people. So just know that that's who I am. That's who I'll be until it's over. And I'll turn it over to Judge Rachel Bell.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be able to be here today to present and talk about criminal justice reform. I know that word reform is like a new buzz term these days. However, I'm going to talk to you about criminal and civil justice reform and what I've seen over the last 17 years as a lawyer, the last 10 years as a judge. And Mr. Claybrook is going to be excited about something I'm going to say during this session this morning. We've had a long conversation about it, almost to a little bit of a debate, if you will. I think he may have won. I don't lose many debates. However, you convinced me on something. And Michelle Alexander convinced me of something in Ebenezer at the Ending Mass Incarceration Conference too. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that today. But I've been your judge here in Nashville for 10 years. And I've been honored to serve. I'm on the ballot right now, looking to seek your votes for re-election. I've got to give that plug. However, serving as your judge over the last 10 years, I've learned a lot. The youngest judge is elected, the only second ever African-American elected after the Honorable Judge Angelita Dalton. And so we've come a long way. We have so much more that we have to do. But I'm very thankful to be on this panel today to talk to you about different reformative ways we can render justice in the criminal space, but also a touch on a little bit of the civil space as well. So thank you for having me on this panel today. And I will give one more thing. I did start the first community court in the state of Tennessee. Community court started back in 1993 in New York. I always say that Tennessee's late to the party. So I found every rule in the book, everything we could possibly do, and shook things up just a little bit. Came with a little bit of a challenge, I will say, when you're trying to do things a little different, but things that help people really move through the system better. Change is not easy, but it's necessary. And you've got to have somebody that's willing to do it. I'm willing to do it, but only if we're following the rules. And there were rules on the books that some people just didn't realize, oh, how are you doing that? Well, there's that rule right there. You didn't know about that rule? Oh, I didn't know we had that rule, because nobody was really looking at them to implement them. I found every rule I could implement, to expunge records, to have NEC dockets, to free people and help them move on with their lives. So I'm excited again about being on this panel today, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you so much, Judge Bell. Let's click it over to Dominic, Mr. Hudson. Hey, Dominic, unmute for us. There we go.
Can y'all hear me? First, I want to thank everyone for being here. I also want to thank Don for just having faith in me when I walked out of prison 7 years ago. I serve on the board of Unheard Voices with Raheem Buford. And also we have a organization that we started in prison called God Loves First, where we go back to the communities in which we cause harm and pain, and we try to help build those relationships back from which we have diminished so much. And also I serve as a minister under my pastor, Robert Gardner, in City of Faith. And just back in the same community where I committed my crime, and just thanking God for the opportunities and being able to impact other people's lives, and also for God to restore relationships. I'm a blessing to be here, even to give y'all a testimony. God has rectified the relationship between my victims and family. I'm able to go to church with my family, victims' family, sisters, brothers, and his father. Not everyone has got to the point of forgiveness, but we just have to lend it over to God and let God do his part and continue to do the best thing going forward. I just thank y'all for this opportunity. Also, thank Miss Rachel Bells. I was able to meet her as well. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Dominic. Next, Jessica Van Dyke.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Jessica Van Dyke, and I am Executive Director and Lead Counsel over at the Tennessee Innocence Project. I hope everyone has heard of the Innocence Project, which is out of New York, but if not, I'll just let you know what we do. We are a separate entity, all of the innocence organizations across the United States, and there's some in different countries as well, different continents, but we work to free wrongfully convicted men and women from prison. And so if you know of someone who says, I did not commit this crime, I was not there, I had nothing to do with it, that's what we do. And we investigate these cases, we litigate these cases. Some of our cases literally take us years. I have a case I've been working on for 8 years now. And so, you'll hear about people who spent 30 years in prison that were wrongfully convicted for a crime they did not commit. And that's exactly what we do. So it's exciting to be here, let everyone know about what we do, hear about what you do. And if you know someone who's been wrongfully convicted, we want you to refer them to us and make sure that we can look into helping them.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Travis, there we go. You popped up. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So good to be in space with everyone. And let me just start by saying that I am speechless. Judge Rachel Bell said that I won. Oh my gosh. Do I have to be here anymore? I don't need to be here anymore. I really don't. I'm done. I'm good. No. So I so love the dialogues that we have had and the progress that we are making in spaces related to justice in our city. There's so much more work to do. I'm the CEO of Rafa Institute. We are a local nonprofit that's in that space. Our stated mission is we help communities to heal from social harm by confronting and solving root causes. So that's our jam, that's our gig. Why am I here? Lots and lots and lots of reasons. But I think for the sake of this conversation, I will share this particular reason. I was a former law enforcement officer here in Nashville about 25 years ago. And it was through that experience of policing, particularly the University Court J.C. Napier community, that I realized this shit ain't working. The way we're doing it is woefully broken, and it is not getting at the root causes. In fact, in so many ways, it's making it worse. And so I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to do something different. At that time, I didn't know what it was, but years later, I would discover that for myself. I feel like I'm doing what I was born to do, and I feel good about saying that. So that's why I'm here today, and I can't wait to share. I come in humility, not as one who knows or has all of the answers, but appreciating the collective wisdom that is here and believing that we as a community do have the answers. And we can no longer pretend that we don't know what to do. There are solutions and things that are working, and I think we'll get a chance to hear about some of those today.
Thank you so very much, Travis. And boy, Judge Bill, that was that was a whole mouthful. I appreciate that banter. So we're actually going to get into some real conversations here. But before we jump in, there are 30 of us in the space. And what I'd like for you to do as we begin asking these questions, I want you to think about one thing. What is the biggest opportunity we have from a justice standpoint in this great city? What do you think is the biggest opportunity that we have from a justice standpoint in this city? And if you will, just put that word or phrase into the chat, because as we're going through the layout for today, we're going to talk about some of these things that every entity here and all of you as well should be aware of. There are a lot of things that impact our community, right? We're going to take a look at the different programs that we have that are working to address mass incarceration. We're going to have a conversation into the policies and the practices that continue to plague our space. We're going to actually talk to the people. As you've seen, multiple folks have been impacted by the justice system and have touched it by being on the inside or being part of the ones on the outside monitoring and managing safety. And then last, we're going to take time and we're going to have some breakouts at the end where we take a look at what we can do and the steps that we need to take to create the right path forward. Like Travis said, this S ain't working. It's not working. So what are we prepared to do about it? So in the chat, I'm saying, oh, incarceration of youth. Yeah, never incarcerate a young person again. To build a cradle to home ownership pipeline. That's right, an opportunity pipeline. And stop looking at it from a deficit. Decriminalizing poverty. Yes, Terry. Poverty, I call it being green, right? When you don't have enough green, you find yourself being fined for sitting on a bench $25 or obstructing space, right? When you're unhoused. Good. Are there any others? Let's see. It's my first group. Oh, providing resources to the court system to make adjustments. Absolutely. And that's why we have representation from the bench today. Because Judge Rachel Bell has done some things that we have never seen in the state of Tennessee and even in this country. And if I'm not mistaken, Judge, correct me if I'm wrong, there are only 6 like municipal courts around this nation. There may be some more now, but I know that you're one of the elite 6. So having this work and doing this work every day is imperative. Another person says, Dominic says, everyone gets a second chance. Travis said to end felonism. Absolutely. Having a felony cripples people mentally, physically, socially, psychologically, financially, and the others. All right, good. Using the community's collective knowledge, experience, history, and care to inform our future decisions. Thank you, Karina. Very good. More expungements, Stacy, absolutely. And that's what I love. Judge Bell is queen of expungements, king and queen, really, because nobody else is really doing it at the level here that the municipal court is doing it. You know, when I had the experience of working through her system and sending hundreds of people to get their records expunged through this work here in Davidson County. So I love that. One more, get funding for out faster in the community. Brian Johnson, come on now. That's a whole different community conversation, but you're right. We have money that needs to get into the hands of those who are marginalized and underrepresented in spaces. Universal representation, immigration legal services. Thanks, Tessa, very good point. We have a lot of opportunity in that space. And so as you can see, Tessa, Brother Hassan, and others are here representing the other voices of color around this great city. This is no longer a black and white city. Being a native is I'm the anomaly now. It's a cool thing. Mental health treatment widely available. Thanks, Jessica, exactly. Having our systems realize that a lot of times when a person is called It may be a mental health crisis as opposed to a need for incarceration. So rethinking and reworking that. No cash bail or pretrial detention. Thank you, Stacy. And I want to give a shout out to those of you who have done work like Free Hearts, my girl Dawn over there, helping these parents who get incarcerated. There's a high number of children who are left parentless because of some of these laws. And then last, better parole and probation oversight. Dominic, you playing. You know that's a sore spot for me too. Amen. Very good. Fully funding our public schools. Yes, Tessa. We talk about that prison to cradle, the cradle to prison pipeline instead of a cradle to prosperity pipeline, right? Education regarding childhood trauma and open door to more discussions around trauma-informed care. Yes, Rochelle. ACEs is just the beginning. If we can get this type of training and learning, even in at the preschool level, because one thing I will share, I have a 4-year-old son who's autistic, and we found out he was autistic because he basically got kicked out of a preschool at the age of 2 for getting written up 8 times in 30 days. Who does that? He didn't hit or anyone. He was just being loud, they said, or rolling out and rolling near people who were upset. I was like, oh my goodness. Establishing a standard that everyone serves in the work they do through a trauma-informed lens. Yes, Caitlin, we really have a lot of work to do. So I'm looking forward to this breakout, but let me go ahead and start these questions. So we've got them broken out into 3 sections. We do have 2 breaks included in the space. So the first section is really going to deal with our policy and programs. So I'm going to ask Judge Rachel Bell, Travis from Rafa Institute, and Jessica Van Dyke to take the primary stage in these questions. So Abby Janice, are you here? I'm sure she's in here in this room.
I am. I'm finding everyone so I can spotlight everyone.
Thank you. She's going to bring the 3 of y'all to the stage and we're going to start the questions. Those of you who are also speakers can add in as well. And but I do want the 3 of them to kind of take these first few because it's really about their programs. The second half will be the people impact, where we'll have Ron Johnson, Stacy Brooks, and Dominic Hudson speak. Okay. All right, we are ready. So if we can get the speakers going. All right. So our first question is, what are some current justice-driven policies we should be aware of that are impacting our community? So the 3 of you, whoever would like to take it.
So I'll wait, Travis and Judge Bell, if you're okay with it, I'll wait and sort of answer lastly, because in my opinion, I get involved in cases when everything fails. So I'm coming in and I'm looking, people have already been convicted, they've already been they're in prison. I'm getting involved because something failed before that. So I think there's so many different factors and issues that need to be addressed. And when they don't get addressed, then people get wrongfully convicted.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit. As a judge, my main role is to enforce the law, is also to oversee, policies and processes. And I know that we're looking at the criminal space, and in the criminal space, as a general sessions court judge, we deal with probable cause. And so if individuals don't already come to an agreement with the district attorney, the victim, and the criminal defense attorney, then they have the option to have a preliminary hearing, and where we listen to both sides, witnesses, to see if there was enough probable cause for the arresting officer to give them that charge. If we determine that, then it goes to the grand jury, and then they indict, and then they move forward through the criminal justice process. One thing that, as a young lawyer and a young judge, I was always looking at was alternatives to incarceration. And when I look at the opportunity that Travis and I, we were on a conference maybe about 1.5 years ago. And after that conference, he belabored to tell me over and over and over how violent offenders should not be incarcerated. And I said, well, the program that I'm working on right now with the United States Department of Justice, with the grant, is only focused on non-violent offenders. When we get done with the grant, they said that we had the opportunity in Nashville to look at violent offenders. And I said, if we get buy-in from the district attorney's office, we get buy-in from the public defender's office, and if the victim agrees, then if there's some violent crimes, maybe we can divert them into our system. And so, Travis, that was the conversation we were having. I was right in the middle of finishing up the Cure Court grant. And you were like, well, violent offenders don't have to go to jail. They don't have to be incarcerated. I said, oh, yes, they do. If they're violent, they're incarcerated. Non-violent is not incarcerated. He's like, no. Violent offenders probably also don't have to be incarcerated. We can figure some other things out. I said, well, you need to let me know if the state of Tennessee is ever going to do that. And Travis was like, well, there's a way. We're going to figure it out. And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on violent offenders not being incarcerated. And I said, well, tell me more about it. So we're on the phone. I didn't have we were about an hour in. And I said, hey, I've got to walk into another meeting. We'll talk about this later. But I started doing some research, Travis. And I realized that across the country, if the victim agreed and we could come to an agreement, then we could look at ways to not have also violent offenders be incarcerated and have them go through a program. And after they go through that program, if the victim still agrees, then maybe that crime could be dismissed or that crime could be adjusted or reduced and let people move on with their lives. And so you asked a question about justice-driven policies. Justice-driven policies right now are incarceration. I know the country, I know that we're looking at trying to find alternatives to incarceration, but I will tell you, every time we have an alternative and we do it, then there's backlash. There's so much backlash that judges, district attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, people in the justice field are like, man, I wash my hands of trying to do this because every time I try to do it, they're gonna put me on the news. Every time I try to do it, somebody's gonna change their mind. Every time you try to do it, you're putting me in the paper or you're saying that I'm doing something wrong. And so the backlash of trying to move the needle through this system and reform it is horrendous and it's scary. I'm not even gonna sit here and act like it's not. It is very scary when you're trying to do something and everybody comes to an agreement and then somebody changes their mind and then it crumbles, it falls apart. I had one situation where the victim did agree and the victim changed their mind. It went bad. We're still in the middle of it right now. However, I was happy. I was like, ooh, Travis is gonna be excited. This victim agreed for these people who were violent not to be incarcerated because they came to an agreement. They wanted to work out the situation. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to call Travis and let him know about this. But we're still going to work towards it. And I'm not giving up on it. If the victim agrees and we can work through it and we can have some opportunities to make people whole and have individuals grow and learn from their mistakes, then we can do it. But there are policies and procedures right now is incarceration. Everything is incarceration. Looking at alternatives is something, it's a conversation. But are we really doing it is a question. We're talking about it. We're saying we want to do it, but are we really doing it? And my answer is no, we're not really doing it. We're not really doing it. We're talking about it. We're saying we want to do it, but we're not doing it. So my role, my goal is to continue to have a seat at the table, continue to learn from people like Travis, learn from people like Michelle Alexander. And what I learned from Michelle Alexander, I was on a conference in ending mass incarceration several years ago with Ralph Warnock before he became congressmember. And they were talking about not incarcerating drug addiction and not incarcerating mental illness. And that was a new term and new concept. Not that their crimes shouldn't be, holding them accountable for their crime, but the disease of mental illness and the disease of drug addiction we need to do it in a different way. Our system is just lock them up, put them in a cage. We've got to figure something out. And I think Tennessee, Nashville, I know that we're moving towards it. I love our behavioral care center. I think we're doing a phenomenal job there. I think Judge Blackburn is doing a phenomenal job with mental health court. I think Judge Robinson is doing a phenomenal job with our recovery court. Our care court, ages 18 to 30, looking at those mistakes that those young people are making and trying to help them make better decisions. I think we're looking at it, but it's coming with opposition, I will say. It's coming with, no, let's go back to the old way. Let's give them bonds, let's put them in incarceration. It's almost where you get tired of talking about it, to be honest with you. I'm probably sounding like a recording right now. I'm saying the same thing over and over, but Travis, I'm gonna yield it to you. But the policies are 1129 or the general sessions. The policies are, if they have a probation violation now, if we don't violate them, then, the policies are not in favor of restorative justice right now. So we've got to look at different ways. The legislature and other individuals, other judges, our district attorney's office, and our public defender's office, we all have got to maybe even start a steering committee for the city of Nashville on criminal justice reform itself, so that we can figure out what can we try, what pilot stages can we be in, what things can we see and look and track the data and see how recidivism is going down with a group of people that we can maybe work with.
Yeah, thanks so much, Judge Bell. And just as you were speaking it, I was thinking, yes, our policy is to incarcerate. That's our policy. I mean, that's our national policy. That's been our policy. That's just been our policy as a nation for ever. We use the criminal legal system and the criminal legal process to respond to almost all of the social illnesses that are present in communities, whether we're talking about economic isolation and poverty, whether we're talking about homelessness, mental health, lack of education in terms of formal education or kinds of education, technical education that allows us to go into trades. Regardless of what it is, people, their efforts to survive are criminalized. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, yes, people cause harm. They do, they cause harm. That happens. But our response to it is to simply incarcerate. And one of the things that I think is just important to realize, and to be heard, and for us to memorize this and say it, we have data on the effectiveness of incarceration. We have more data on that than anything. We've got decades, centuries of data on incarceration and whether it works. So if incarceration made us safer, we would have the safest nation in human history. If it worked, we should be the safest country ever, because we practice that almost exclusively. We do that more than we do any other response to harm when it happens, to unsafe actions when it happens. And so if it worked, it would have worked by now. And we have practiced it so much in so many different ways that it should work, but it doesn't. And we know that. We know that it doesn't work. And so my argument is, what do we have to lose to try something different? Even if it doesn't work, what do we have to lose in trying something different? One of the central failures of the criminal legal system, yes, is with respect to people who cause harm, and in particular, violent harm. Our system fails at adequately responding to that person, right? And when I say adequate, I mean in a way that positions that person with the best possible chance to never cause that harm again to anyone, right? Because that's what we know from research. People who are harmed, the one thing that they want more than anything is for it to never happen to them or anyone else again. And you can call it car theft, home burglary, homicide, rape, it does not matter. It is the same across the board. People who are victimized by violent crime or crime in general just don't want it to happen to anybody else. They don't want it to happen to them again. That's what we want. And so, do we have a system that responds in a way that gets at that? No. And furthermore, the system doesn't work for people who have been victimized by crime. It does not work. All you have to do is go to a parole board hearing and sit and listen to the agony and the plea of people trying to keep the person who caused them harm incarcerated after 25 years. The pain that they have over what happened to them is just as fresh 25 years later. So if that person being in prison for 25 years actually made them feel better, then they should feel better, but they don't. All you have to do is go to a death penalty appeal. The agony that families are going through wanting to see the death penalty carried out shows that they have not experienced it. And so from a policy standpoint, our current processes work for no one. They do not work for anybody. They don't work for the person who's caused harm, to help guide them to a place to where they don't do it again. It doesn't work for people who have been harmed, to give them a process and a voice, right? So what if we tried something different? We've been piloting, and we're really done with the pilot. We're doing it now, right? We've been doing a restorative justice process in juvenile court for the last 4 years. We've had over 50 kids complete the program. We've only had 2 young people out of 50 get reconvicted of new charges, right? We have almost a 90% satisfaction among people who have been harmed in those cases, right? We are currently working a homicide case where the surviving family members and the young person who caused this unbelievable event in their life decided that they wanted to do a restorative justice process because they recognized that the traditional criminal legal process was not going to give them what they needed and what they wanted. And so we cannot pretend any longer that we don't have viable options, that we don't know what to do, that there are not other policies that we can try. And lastly, I'll say, I think the cool thing is I'm listening to all 3 of our candidates for district attorney, and every last one of them have restorative justice as a centerpiece of their campaign, of their platform. That's, in my mind, that's progress. That is movement along the policy line. That's movement along the political line. The political calculus has shifted because they know we have to do things differently, and we have good ideas about what we can do. And yes, restorative justice can work in cases involving violence. In fact, I would argue that those are the spaces and places where it works the best, because the harm is so intense and our system is so woefully inadequate to respond to people's needs in the aftermath of harm.
And I want to mention one more thing, and I forgot to mention this, Travis. And so we just started the CARE Court, which is ages 18 to 30, looking at those alternatives and then the indigenous principles. And so I remember walking with I was on a panel with CNM a few months ago, and we were talking about restorative indigenous principles, where the victim and the offender come together in a peace circle meeting, and they'd be able to tell each other how they feel and try to work out the agreement. And so that's part of our program. I do think that that's part of a program that hopefully the nation here in Nashville, at least, we can start working on, because you're right. In parole hearings, the harm is still as fresh as it happened 25 years ago. But if we implement these pre-circle meetings and indigenous principles at the very beginning of the harm, I think we can start a healing process, therapy, and moving forward. You're right. All victims, every last one of them, want to not see it happen to them again or happen to anybody else. And if you let the victim have more control over how we come to agreement and make sure that we hold people accountable, not just during their sentencing time, but hold them accountable a little bit on down the road, like in the aftercare mentor program, and make sure the recidivism rate of that person, and the program is actually working, then it takes time. Like you said, you have 50 individuals in 4 years. It takes time to get these programs off the ground. You can't just snap your finger and say, oh, we got 100 people that went through the program. You've got to be very, very, very consistent, and you've got to put the program and put the resources behind it. So I'm very happy about what Nashville is doing in the juvenile space and what we're starting to do in the adult space. But you do know it comes with pushback. So we need people in conversations like this to continue lifting these programs up and having the support.
And I just want to say that that's what we've been doing. Those indigenous principles, we bring people together when they want to talk about the harm, and we prepare them. And I think that's the advantage that we as a nonprofit have over our system process. The system process is about efficiency and churning out fast. You know, get through it, get through it, get through it, get through the docket, get through the docket, get through the docket, get through the docket. And even still with that kind of a philosophy, it takes forever for you to get to trial, right? It still takes forever, right? But what we have is, I think the advantage that we have is two things. One, we have time. We pause long enough to say, what do you need? How has this impacted you? Like, no, seriously, like beyond just the breaking of a law, to speak to a young person or a person who's caused harm, how did you get here? What's the harm that you have experienced that has gone unaccounted for that has brought you to this space? That doesn't offer an excuse for what you've done, but may explain how you got here, right? And then bringing people together and having these kinds of conversations, that's where the transformation begins to happen. And I would add this, there is a very logical reason for bringing people who have caused harm and who have been harmed together in the same space, because we talk about accountability. We talk, and I'm currently writing a book on it called Accountability. We talk about holding people accountable, and that's a fallacy. We cannot hold anyone accountable for anything. The ability to account for something is something that you learn. Most of us don't have it, right? It is something that we acquire, and there are processes and things that need to happen in order for us to be able to account for a harm that we caused. And just think about it from this perspective. If I, Rachel, harm you, right? It is impossible for me to account for the true impact of that harm if I never hear from you how I harmed you. Like, I know the act that I may have done, but the impact and the details of how it impacted you and what it did to your life and how it changed you and what it did to you physically and psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, and what it did to your relationships with your family and how, and all of the details of how it impacted you. If I never know what that is, how can I ever account for that? How can I ever transform from that? And so there is deep value in actually hearing. And I love how you said early on at the beginning, not 3 years later, after the trial and the sentence and all of that stuff. No, at the very beginning, right? How did I impact? And then I can begin to truly take account for, then I have the ability to account for the harm that I caused you. And then I can know how to repair it. I can learn how to repair it to the greatest extent possible. I can partner with you in that to the extent that you allow me to do that, if you want me to do that, right? The world of possibilities open up with respect to healing and transformation and justice and feelings of justice and feelings of repair and feelings of safety, right? Feelings of safety. I'm pretty sure that this person's probably never going to do this again because I've sat with them. I know them. I've spent time with them. I've seen their transformation and so forth and so on. And there's so many other ways we can apply this across the system. I mean, at parole hearings, at all sorts of spaces, we can apply these kinds of principles to the space. I've talked a lot. Thank you for listening to me. So I'll stop.
Jessica, great points.
So I've been thinking about how the work that we do really fits in with the conversation right now. And I have a couple of reflections, I think. What I'm hearing is that for the system to change, there's going to have to be a deep philosophical shift in our thinking. And that's not what's happening right now. So I want to talk about something that I think is very pressing, which is the current system and truth in sentencing. So I'm sure everyone saw yesterday, we just passed truth in sentencing. And I'm thinking about how all of these things affect my work. I'm thinking about resources, I'm thinking about sentencing. So I will say really briefly, for anyone who doesn't know, when you get arrested, you do have the probable cause hearing that Judge Bell talked about. And I only want to briefly talk about this. I do want to talk about sentencing because I think that's important. But I want to briefly discuss this because wrongful convictions happen for a variety of reasons. More than 3,000 people have been exonerated. That's 26,000 years that people have spent in prison for crimes they didn't commit. And we recently had our Innocence Network conference where all of the innocence organizations come together. We were in Phoenix. And I sat in a room with more than 200 freed people who had spent 6,030 years just in that room, 6,000 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. And these crimes, you know, people get convicted because they don't have the resources they need, right? We talk about all the time about how if you have resources, you can navigate the system we've set up, and it's true. But when people get arrested, they're going to have a probable cause hearing. And I just want to make sure everyone on this call knows you may be appointed a public defender and they may be very good at their job. You know, Nashville's really lucky to have a great public defender's office. But if there's a conflict, you may be appointed an attorney who is fresh out of law school, has no training, has not undergone any classes, any experience to take your case. You may just have someone randomly appointed to your case. You don't get to pick. And you know, the rates that we're still paying attorneys are $50 an hour, which most attorneys do appointed work. I did appointed work. They don't do it to get rich, but I think we have to be honest about who's taking these cases and why they're taking them. They're either taking them because they genuinely care or because they're just trying to, you know, fill a space until they find something else. And I've seen that happen firsthand. So I just want to emphasize, people get wrongfully convicted because something goes wrong from the start. And we need to make sure that people are given the resources they need. If you have a good attorney, they're able and they're trained in mental health. I think Caitlin and Rochelle both mentioned trauma-informed lenses and thinking about those things, really important. And you don't get trained that in law school. Like, those are things that you have to want to learn and be dogged and trying to understand your clients and their lives. If that's not a place where you personally come from. So I think from the beginning, having resources at the general sessions level is really critical. There are studies that say between 3 and 10% of people serving a sentence in the United States are wrongfully convicted. They're innocent. But I want to emphasize 20% of people who have been exonerated pled guilty. 20% of people who've been exonerated have pled guilty to crimes they did not commit. You have to ask yourself why. And, you know, I think that level is somewhat higher at the general sessions level, not necessarily in Nashville, but generally speaking, because if you have a minor offense and you can get probation and get out that day, and you can't make your bond, why would you not plead guilty? You've got a family, you've got children, you've got everything in your life. It's got to be a rational decision, right? So we've got to talk about at the very beginning, when someone gets arrested, how these policies affect at the very beginning. But I want to go ahead and take that to transition to my second point, which is about sentencing and truth in sentencing and longer sentences. And I have to tell you, having represented a number of individuals on very serious crimes, when a life sentence is 60 years and someone offers you 20 and says, you know what, you could be out to see your kids have grandchildren. It is a tough, you know, it is a tough decision, especially if, so we all have different personalities, right? I'm very risk averse. I don't like risk. I like to know what's coming down the pike. And a jury trial is filled with risk. So when we use, not we on this call, but when the system uses draconian sentencing to make people have to take these tough decisions, it can sometimes make much more sense to plead guilty to a crime you did not commit, know you will see the light of day, and possibly get out, versus the risk of a jury trial, you know, where these people may not be your peers that are sitting there in judgment of you. They may not understand why you did X, Y, and Z. And, you know, we've got to be honest about the role that sentencing and very long sentences in Tennessee play in causing people to make decisions that they might not make if we had more moderate sentencing. So with that, those are, you know, I sort of got to what happens at the very beginning of a criminal charge and then what happens at the very end of a criminal charge. There's so much more in between. And I would just emphasize, if we're going to be, there's not going to be philosophical change overnight. And I have to tell y'all, I work all over the state of Tennessee in different jurisdictions. The conversations that are happening in this room right now are incredible. I'm not hearing this anywhere else in the state. And I can point you to numerous jurisdictions that are tough on crime. And guess what? It's not working there. So, I think Nashville, however this shakes out, has to be a model. And I think the conviction review unit that's been implemented in the past several years, where we are finally freeing people who did not commit crimes, and we can come together with the district attorney's office and work collaboratively. We've got to be having that kind of cooperation. Like this current system that's built is all about antagonism and working against each other. And at some point, we've got to learn that's not the way to go. So with that, I'll end it there. But I think we could have this conversation in any other jurisdiction, and these are not the responses and not the conversations that's happening. So Nashville's got to keep it up and has to be an example for every other place in the state.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Jessica, I wanted to say, and I want to I want to maybe put this sandwich together. So what Travis is saying, starting it at the very beginning. Jessica, I've known you for a while now, and I'm very, very proud of the work that you've done. And I would give kudos to our public defender's office here in the city of Nashville, bar none. Phenomenal public defenders. And I know when I first became a judge, I would point people to public defender's office. Oh, I don't want them. I need to hire me a private lawyer. I'm like, no, they are your best advocate. They're free. If you meet the guidelines, they're awesome. And yeah, I court appoint attorney sometimes. And I have to make sure that I'm just not appointing somebody that just wants to get their check and doesn't really care about the people. And so Ms. Van Dyke, when we come in as a judge, you want to do something different. That comes with backlash, that. And you want to change up some stuff, especially General Sessions Court. When I first became a judge, I realized that the people that in the community here in Nashville, because I'm very entrenched in the community, and I think many of you know that. I'm right in the middle of everything that's happening. Most people that come to General Sessions Court, I may know their great-grandparents, their grandparents, their church members, their pastors in the audience. I see their family, because my mom is a teacher. I know most of the people that are coming through our criminal justice system because they're repeat offenders of families, repeat offenders of neighborhoods, to be frankly honest with you. And I've seen it my whole life because of the way that I was raised here in the city of Nashville. But you're right, in General Sessions Court, we can stop it in its tracks. In 10 years, I know that we've worked to have people not go on and plead guilty because they're going to get probation and they're gone and get out of jail as quick as possible. I know, at least in my division, we've worked to make sure that we're looking at their affidavit. Why are they pleading guilty to this crime? I stop attorneys always in their tracks. I'm like, hey, why is this individual going to plead guilty to this possession charge? It's their first charge. Well, Your Honor, it's only going to be on their record for 5 years. How old is this guy? He's 20. I said, so he's 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and he's going to have this record where he can't get a job, he can't get housing, all the collateral consequences that are happening to him. But we have a new diversionary court for individuals ages 18 to 30. Let them go through the program. Let them heal and learn from this mistake and see if they can do something better on their first offense. Let's try not to push them through the system real quick. The attorney got paid, but now this offender is on probation and they have this on their record for 5 years. Versus, let's put them in a program that lasts maybe 3 months, 6 months, see if they comply and give them a chance to not have this on their record for the rest of their life. Because as you know, Jessica, even though it's going to be on their record for 5 years, how long is it going to take them to get it expunged? How long is it going to take them to get it off of their record? And then how long is it going to take them to move on with their lives? Can you imagine any of us on this call being ages 20 to 25 and having to look back on something that you did? There was a minor mistake, and you have to tell somebody everywhere you go, hey, I paid my debt to society. I'm not on probation. I'm not in jail, but yes, I have this charge on my record. Many people don't know what those collateral consequences look like unless you are in a church like mine, or you're a person that's dealing with people that are, I get text messages and emails all night long with people telling me that they're homeless. Can you help me find somewhere? My charge is not allowing me to get an apartment. Me and my family are in a car. I was at the voting precinct yesterday in Green Hills, and 2 ladies walked up to me from a program that I've been working on and said, Judge Bell, me and my family are in a car. My son over there, you see, we're going from motel to motel, and it's costing us $538 a week because we can't find anywhere to live, only because of their criminal background, which is a minor offense. So yes, it's important that the general sessions court level, we slow it down. We've got to slow down this conveyor belt system. We have got to slow it all the way down to allow people to see, yes, if I plead guilty to this and I'm on probation, I'm just gonna catch this charge. What are my collateral consequences? Maybe I get a continuance to try to see if there's something else I can do to hold myself accountable for the charge. And now I've gotten flack for doing that. Judge Bell's late, Judge Bell's this, Judge Bell's that. No, I'm slowing down this conveyor belt system. I'm giving you an opportunity to make sure you understand what you're pleading to and making sure that you're not being pushed through this system. I'm giving you time to do that in the courtroom. So you hear all these other things and it's like, no, that's not true. We're trying to help these people. We're trying to help these people. Jessica, you're right. We're the only county in the state that is talking about this. But we've got to do it. And as long as I have the ability to do it, along with my colleagues, I will continue myself. You can hold me accountable. I promise you, I will be on the front lines, continue to do this work and to continue to have these conversations with our mayor's office. And I'm glad the mayor's office is on the call today. And with Travis working with our court, because I'm going to go on and order him to work with our court. Hey, you don't get an ass. And Jessica, y'all are doing a phenomenal job. I just wanted to say that you're right. If we can stop it, general sessions is where it all starts. If we can stop in general sessions, we don't have to worry about anything else. We're the first threshold. We can do it here. Everything comes to us first. So we can do it here. We just got to get the buy-in and make sure that the city's okay with it, make sure everybody's all right with it, and that we're all in agreement with it. And I'm willing to do everything we can to see what we can do at the general sessions court level to stop this conveyor belt system, to stop these collateral consequences and everything going up the ladder where it's affecting people's lives, because it's not just the collateral consequences. Then they start using drugs, and then they start self-medicating, then they start getting depressed, and then the whole family crumbles from one mistake. That we can put it back together in the very beginning and heal the victim and the offender and let their lives be able to have the pursuit of justice, right? And liberty. Our mistakes shouldn't be the only thing that causes us to not live life.
I just want to add to that. I know you probably want to go on, Dawn, but I just want to add very, very briefly two things. One, I love what's happening, for example, and this is just sort of picking up where, Jessica, you and Rachel are driving, continue to drive. We have finally arrived at a place to where we recognize the impact of mental health as a mitigating factor, right, on behavior, right? I want us to continue to push. I spoke with Sheriff Hall about this, the other week. I want us to also, as a community, as a culture, as a way of thinking, as a city, to also appreciate that just like a mental illness can drive you to do things that you would normally do in your right mind, and that we need a different response to that, social illnesses can do the same thing. Social illnesses are just as much of a mitigator as mental illness. There are social factors that can drive us to do things that we normally wouldn't do if everything else was all right. And we need to account for that as we think about engaging people in the criminal legal system. Poverty is a social factor that drives you to, listen, a hungry belly will drive you to do stuff just as much as schizophrenia will. Okay, that you wouldn't normally do. And we need to appreciate that, right? Fear will drive you to do some stuff. Survival will drive you to do some stuff that you wouldn't normally do if that wasn't the case. And I think we need to appreciate and think about how do we respond differently. And so we have a whole behavioral care center that we say we need to have a different response from, for people who have mental illness. Well, we need some sort of infrastructure process system that also accounts for or responds to the social illnesses and factors that people have that drive them to do things. And I saw Ron, last thing, I saw Ron talking about CBT, and Caitlin's been chiming in. This is why we added multi-systemic therapy to our restorative justice process, right? Because we recognize the kids got a plethora of stuff going on besides this charge, right? They got a lot of stuff happening in their home, and thinking about behavioral change, not just with respect to the charge that brought them into the criminal legal system, but behavior change in general. What does it look like to really shore up the executive function? What does it look like to help a parent, a caregiver, have the tools that they need to overcome some of the deficits that they have as parents, right? So this is an important part of the work that we do. We do all sorts of kinds of therapies: behavioral therapy, family therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, all sorts of things, right? So this is an important part, and we can expand this kind of thing into the adult court. No doubt. It's such an easy thing. I can see it. We can do it. Judge Bell, I'm so happy to hear you say, after 2.5 years, that we can do something together. I am so happy to hear you say it.
I was always down for you now. I was always down for you. It was just the violent crime situation. I was I had to do some research.
No problem.
We are Tennessee now.
No problem. Well, and again, I think the argument for those who want to give pushback to it, and there are people who give pushback to it.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
We're going to do it.
We have to hear that. We have to hear the pushback and understand the pushback. We also have to appreciate that, we're talking about 95 counties across Tennessee. Davidson County is an urban county. Shelby County, Hamilton County, these are urban centers, right? Things do look different in the rural space, right? Things feel different in the rural space. People come to understand truth and make decisions differently in the rural space. But again, I think there is a place for this. And we should be, we're working with the Office of Criminal Justice Programs to expand restorative justice practices across the entire state of Tennessee. Super excited about that work that's happening. And the National Criminal Justice Association, right, is a part of that. So there is movement in that space. And I think Davidson County is serving as an incubator. And I want us to continue to serve as an incubator for these kinds of opportunities that we can then curate to the rest of our state and to the rest of our region. Because guess what? We have similar dynamics in Alabama and Birmingham and Jackson, Mississippi, and Atlanta, Georgia, and Macon, Georgia, right? You just named the place in the rules in the Southeast, right? We don't have to be the last. We can be the first in some stuff.
All right, that was amazing. Woo. Now, I will say, Judge Bill has put some things out in the universe. Jessica has put some things out in the universe, and you heard Travis closes with that good, what I call tent revival style ending. So if you are interested, and this is for anybody, because some of y'all are having to go to other meetings. If this is something that's of interest to you, reach out to these individuals. I put their contact information in the chat. If you want to be involved in some of this grassroots planning and really about the business, contact them. We absolutely love that. So Judge Bell, I do want you to tell people how about the municipal court and how to get involved. And then I'll be bringing my second group up after this. So I want them to hear.
Okay, so just for clarification, I know when she says municipal court, General Sessions Court has municipal powers. And so General Sessions Court, we deal with criminal, we also deal with civil, we also deal with traffic, we also deal with mental health committals, and then we also deal with landlord-tenant matters, debt collection matters, and things of that nature. So we are a municipal court, but we're also metro. And so we handle everything first threshold that ever happened. Anything that happens in Nashville, you're gonna come before a General Sessions Court judge first. I'm one of 11. Out of 11 courts and divisions, we have, I think, and Jessica, you can say this, I think Davidson County is probably the best in the country, to be honest with you. I really do believe. We've got drug court, which is recovery court for people that are dealing with addiction. We have mental health court for people that are dealing with mental illness. We've got a veterans court for people that are veterans. We have a sex trafficking court for those that are dealing with prostitution and addiction. We also have, with my court, the Music City Community Court, which meets people in the community. It's a court that we've created where you don't have to come to the courthouse. You can meet us at the Magruder Center. We've got our own designated space. And for a while, we were moving around to churches and community centers. But now, with the Music City Community Court, we have 3 courts, and that's the courts I want to talk to you about. It's Restore, Reentry Court. So Jessica, once they plead guilty, when they finish their crime, What can we expunge off their record? How can we get them through the pardon process if their record can't be expunged, and get them through asking the governor to pardon and then asking the president of the United States to pardon them? We work with Howard Gentry with that process, as well as Congressman Cooper's office in the Equity Alliance. We've been working with them and continue to work with them and partner with them. That's the Restore Reentry Court. We have that every 4 to 6 weeks at the Magruder Center. You get to decide if you want to come see us at the courthouse. That's Monday through Friday at the Criminal Court Compliance Division with Howard Gentry's office. Or you can come see me on Wednesday afternoon or on Saturday mornings. I wanted to have that court because a lot of people can't take off work during the week. And then also a lot of people are afraid of coming to the Justice Birch building. So a lot of trauma. One thing I learned, because I think most of us on the call are probably nerds. So nerds are cool people, right? We figure things out, we read, we research, and we don't just talk. We actually know what we're talking about. You see all these books, we've read, we are versed. We can come to the table with knowledge and not just feeling and emotion. With that, I learned, I was going to offender conferences, learning people that have been through the criminal system. How did it affect them? What was the trauma that happened to them? So my first 2 years on the bench, I realized that all rise, stand here now, take attention. All those to be heard, come before this honorable court. God save the United States of America. That statement and the judge walking to the courtroom traumatized so many people. It had trauma. For lawyers, it kind of got them a little scared about their turn to represent. Victims and witnesses, offenders were kind of scared with that process. Now, did it create the decorum? Did it create, okay, this is serious business, we're about to handle your cases? Yes. But out of 100 people, only about 3 or 4 people needed to feel that this is serious business. Just coming to the courthouse alone and sitting in the room, it's serious business. So I decided the other 97 people don't need to be traumatized with me saying all rise. So we don't do all rise in my courtroom. Since 2014, you will never come in my courtroom and have to stand up for me. I don't know why you need to stand up for me. You don't need to stand up for me. I think my brain still will work, and my ability to read the law and listen to your case is still gonna be okay. So I looked at that, and then I heard, Jessica, you'll probably appreciate this, people that felt like they didn't understand what they were pleading to. Me and Howard Gentry talk about this all the time. People will say, I didn't know how to get my record expunged. I didn't know that I pled guilty. I didn't know that this was going to affect me for the rest of my life. I just know I need to get back to my job. I just knew I didn't want to miss my wife, my husband. I wanted to get back to my kids. I didn't know this was going to affect me now. For the last 5 years, I haven't been able to get an adequate job. I haven't been able to move forward. I'm a stay-at-home dad now. I'm a stay-at-home mom now. And not that that's not a good job, but so many people are depressed doing that. I can't get a job, so I just keep the kids instead of getting a job and taking them to daycare. Some people would rather get a job that pays them the same amount as daycare so that they will feel whole. Some people want that. They don't want to feel like they have to stay at home and take men. A lot of men don't want to feel like they have to stay at home and take care of the kids. They want to get up and get dressed and go somewhere, but they're having to do that, and they're okay with it because they're great fathers, but it's because they were pushed in that position. What about being able to option into that position and not have to be forced into that position of staying at home? So many young adults are having to do that. So that's the Restore Court. The NDC docket, waiving court costs on the fees. In 10 years, I have waived over $17 million in court costs on the fees. Have I gotten some controversy for that? Why is she waiving all those court costs on the fees? Well, the federal government has a law on the books that says if you're indigent and you can't pay your court costs on the fees, we as judges are supposed to waive them. So if it's on the books and you're entitled to it, why would I not waive your court costs on the fees? Got some pushback from that, but it's on the books, y'all. I got pushback from stopping the conveyor belt system. It's on the books, y'all. So where's that rule? It's local rule 4 in General Sessions Court. Y'all adopted it 3 years before I became a judge. So you've got to have a judge that's willing to find the rule, tweak the rule, and implement it for a group of people that need it. So that's the Restore Court. Then we've got the Care Court that's in this pilot stages for ages 18 to 30. And that's where Travis, you will come in, hopefully, soon in the next few months. We can start talking to see what this looks like. But we've got people that are nonviolent offenders that are coming through the program. And we've only had one case where there was a violent offender situation where the victim, the family came together and they wanted to try to see if they could work something out. We're still carving through that and piloting through that. So that's the Care Court, ages 18 to 30 for people that have committed crime. And then we have the Legacy Court, which started during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is the civil side that I keep talking about. Justice reform is not just criminal. There's so many things that happen civilly. They're just as bad as criminal. Somebody gets a debt and they have this on their record, then their credit is poor. So then the credit is low, which means what? It's just like having a criminal charge. Having an eviction on your record, even if it's dismissed, is just like having a dismissed possession charge that you didn't expunge. In the civil world, it stays on your record. You can't get this debt collection off. You can't get this eviction off, even if it was dismissed, even if you paid your debt and they washed it away, it's still on your background. So now, can you get a good job? How many people are going to want to hire you in certain fields if you had debt collection? How many people are going to hire you in certain fields if you are a party to an action for an eviction? How many people are going to want to allow you to rent from them when they look at your rental history and you've got debt collection, you've got bad credit history, and you're a party to an action for an eviction, but you paid it all off? You can't get it expunged. So the civil world needs as much attention, if not more, than the criminal world. All of us are dealing with the woes of life. Some of the civil is not even making a mistake. You just lost your job. Your husband passed away. Your wife passed away. You needed to make some adjustments. You had a child and you needed to stay at home for a while and your income changed. Civil is just as bad. More people have more civil issues in life than criminal actions, to be frankly honest with you. If you look at it, more people have civil issues that have affected their life than these criminal issues that are affecting people's lives. If you look at the numbers, because all of you on this call, I'm sure, have had a late payment to a credit card. Yes. All of you probably owe some law school loans or some kind of loan. All of you got a car note. All of you have a mortgage or rent. And I'm sure you've been late at least once or twice in your life. I don't know if you had to deal with court, but I'm sure you've had a 90-day late that affected your credit and it dropped a little bit. Do you know that stays with you for a while? You may have to wait like a year before you can apply for something else to get more lines of credit. Or you say, I'm done with credit cards. I'm just going to cancel all of them. Credit score was about 670. You canceled all your credit cards at zero balances. Then your credit go down to 400 because you canceled your credit cards. They want you to keep the credit, the line of credit, to keep your credit score up. How many people know that? So what I'm saying is it's an issue. And so when you're young, you're thinking, oh, let me just tear these credit cards up. I'm done. And then your credit score drops. So civil justice reform is actually as important or even more important than criminal justice reform. So the legacy court, we were able to stand up a program to help landlords and tenants. Landlords receive back rent and tenants keep a roof over their head. And I'm very proud of that program. So that's the new court for the city of Nashville's, one of the only courts in the country. I didn't even know that. So I got a call from the White House to present at the White House Eviction Prevention Summit because they had looked around and Nashville was the only one that was created to do this. And I was also able to talk with MSNBC Andrew Mitchell show with Julian Castro about this program. We were working on it 2 years before the pandemic, but then when the pandemic hit, the mayor's office gave me a call and said, hey, I heard you're working on housing court. Can you pivot and help us? And so I stopped working on CARE, Travis, the CARE diversionary court, to go on and stand up the legacy court because we were dealing with a pandemic. So that's where we are. Those are those three courts. We're only the third court in the nation for ages 18 to 30 that is started for the criminal space, which is CARE. And so I think that's what you're talking about, Don. But we're number 69 in the world because community courts are not just in the United States, they're in Sweden, Africa, South America. We're number 69 in the world for community court, but we're the first in the state of Tennessee. So that's kind of where we are. Being innovative, looking at things, and being innovative, comes with pushback. Everybody that's ever tried to do something different or thought, how can we change this system? It's not working. It's going to come with pushback. We just got to keep going. We wouldn't even all be on this call if there wasn't pushback with segregation, right? And integration. You got to keep going. Women on this call wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't even be able to speak as a woman, right? Because we're supposed to be in the background if we didn't have people that were willing to work towards change and innovation. So change agents, we've got to be willing to take the struggle and the challenges along the way. But I'm willing to continue this fight with people like you, open-minded people, and seeing what we can do and work the tweaks, work the kinks out. Not everything works, but you got to try, Travis. Like you said, what's the worst that can happen if we don't try? We've got to try.
All right. Well, I thank you so much. The three of you have been amazing. If you can stick around, please stick around. I want to go ahead and bring up our next three speakers. We have our lived experience. So we're talking about the people. So Ron Johnson, Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Judge Rachel Bell. Thank you, Travis of the Rafa Institute. So now we're going to move into our lived experiences and our people. What about the people? So Stacy Brooks, Dominic Hudson, and Ron Johnson. So this group, I really want us to think about the things that we have built on, the policies. We know the opportunities around the justice system. We know the opportunities around restorative spaces and mental health. Now we want to talk about the impact of lived experiences. So I just want to give space right now for our three speakers to talk about what it meant for them, because they've all touched the justice system in some way. So I want them to take this in mind as you share your story. What programs and systems were in place for you when you were incarcerated or detained? And what have you learned about reunification and the needs in our community? So which one of you would like to go first?
I can go first. Again, thank you, Don, for this opportunity, and thank you all for being on this call. And that's a lot. Y'all said a lot. I mean, a whole lot. And when I go into conversations like this, I like to tell people that, I didn't wake up and say I want to go to prison. I didn't wake up and say I want to commit crimes. There were some actions in my community. I heard T.D. Jakes say, you can only be as great as you've been taught. How can you go in a community and tell someone that whatever their grandmother, whatever their father and mother has taught them is incorrect when this is what they have seen all their life? And in my case, that's all I seen was drugs and alcohol and abuse and stealing and killing. And so how could you go into an individual life and tell them everything they've seen in their life is incorrect because it's a normal life? And for me, going to prison and being separated from that opportunities and those crimes in my community, it showed me there is a better life. There is something different than what I've been shown. And you had to go through those life experiences to know that there is something different. I'm a family of four boys and two girls, and all the men in my family has been incarcerated. All my mother's siblings, all my siblings has been incarcerated and been affected by incarceration. My sister was released in 2006, and I went to prison 6 months behind her. And it's just thinking about those impacts and what it does to a community and what it does to everybody. Just a short story, man. My daughter was shot and killed 3 weeks ago. And just being able to sit here on this call and talk about justice. And yeah, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. I don't understand, and it's okay. But I have to realize that this young man still at 20 years old, he shot my 20-year-old daughter, the robber. She met up and she didn't give him no money. He shot her in the head. But looking at this opportunity to show this young man the same grace and mercy that God has given me, it just seemed powerful for him to say that, yes, I'm angry, but I don't have hatred because I've been on both sides. And I try to understand, why did he do this and why did this? And God said, that's not even important. The why is not always important. And we got to get away from sometimes of why things happen in our community and get down to the solution of why things happen in our community. Because growing up in my community, in most of Black communities, you hear none, you see none. That's just the thing. And I've been called into community to tell people, let the law enforcement handle their job. Let them do what they're supposed to do to help build those relationships and not take powers and matters into our own hands. Because if we can show something different and be something different, our community changes, and it also starts with us and going back into community. Yeah, I was impacted by prison and what prison done to me. I went through a vocational trade, a brick mason in prison by Freddie Simmons. He's a master in masonry. And he told me once I was incarcerated, and he said, man, you like a fine young man. I went to prison at 23. And he said, you know, this course would charge you $2,500 to take if you was taking it on the streets. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, why don't you take it in here for free? He said, anything the system allows you to take for free, take it. And I took that advice. You know, rehabilitation is not for what the system has for us, it's what we have for ourselves. And if we want to do better, we'll do better. But we got to have those opportunities and tools in place to even make those changes. Because yes, coming from a family that what I come to from abuse, and people say, well, you have, it's man over matter. You have a situation, you have a choice in all this. But if I don't know how to make the correct choice, how would I make a right choice? And I've just been able to understand and live that and go back into my community where I've hurt and show these young men, look, yeah, the music we listen to, yes, entertainment, but we got kids that are trying to live this. We got kids that are trying to live what the drug dealers are pulling up in these nice cars and they getting the women. You know, you got to be able to show them, yeah, it's something different. And I thank God for the Omega Psi Phi brothers that come in. It showed me brothers like myself coming in prison that are real entrepreneurs, own their own businesses, living their own lives without crime and without just any kind of matters in their lives. You know, life happens to everybody. And what I really like about this Christian journey, you know, and that's what kind of bothered me, is that when I was ordained when I was 15 to be, and people tell me, how was you ordained at 15 and went to prison? I was like the prodigal son. Some people are not going to be able to be like a prodigal son. Some kids ain't going to not make it back to the house. But I say, don't go out looking for them. Leave the door open for when you go out looking for them, they might be already back before you get there. So I look at my life and you're like, hey, yeah, I made this decision. I made the wrong decision. But what I'm gonna do about it? And who are the people I'm gonna try to impact? Because my life was impacted a whole lot. You know, my victim's family, I'm related to the victim as one, and then the victim that was killed, he had my first cousin pregnant. So here we here as a young man that's in our family that I was charged with killing his dad. In the justice system, yeah, at 23 years old, they said life without parole. Automatically. I was guilty until proven innocent. I had to go and prove my innocence. But my attorney at the time, like, well, 20 years would be the life sentence, right? And scared me. Like, I knew I didn't do it, but if I had the councilman in my favor, willing to fight me all the way, but he scared me with this life sentence. Well, if you take these 20, you'll be out before you're 30. I didn't get out until I was 36. I'm 39 now. I didn't get out until I was 32 years old. Did 10 years in prison for a crime that I didn't commit. Yeah, I played a part in it, but I wasn't the trigger man. I was charged as I was the trigger man. So being able to be in a fair system and being able to know law, letting kids know. What I love about the Caucasian neighborhood and the kids and how they raise their kids. Yeah, they put a gun in their children's hand, they show them the ins and outs of what this gun gonna do. But in our black community, we just hand our black kids guns. Not kids not really knowing the effect of what this gun gonna do. Yeah, we know if we pull the trigger, it will shoot, but we don't really know the detrimental of what this bullet gonna do if it's gonna hit somebody. So we've been able to educate and show these kids the consequences of their action. Well, they won't move any further in criminal activity. They won't go out and do drugs. That they won't go out and bottle their feelings up in a bottle because they got abuse and they seeing their mother and their father being abusive at home. Or better yet, they don't have a mother or father at home. People tell me, well, you call everybody mother. Yeah, because it took many women to raise me. My mom was in and out. And yeah, I didn't know the consequences of what she went through in her life. And I don't blame her for that because she did what she could. But we have to get in these kids' lives early on and show them that there is something different other than what they've been shown. But I could go on and on and on, but I know there's other people who would like to speak. But if there's more time, I can come back to it. I thank y'all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dominic. And as you will see, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. We prayers to you, my brother. And you know, I'll see you soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dominic. Stacy, Ron, who's next?
I'll go next. You know, a lot of what was said by Jessica and Judge Bell really hit home for me. I had never been in trouble a day in my life until I was 33. And I found myself in a position where I put that quote in there where I had no hope. No one ever stopped to ask me what had happened to me. Everybody cared about what I had done. And so, you know, when I look back on my life and I look back on the mental health issues that I struggled with, not just from myself, but even my family. If mental health would have been talked about, or if it would have been a real targeted conversation, a lot of the path that I took may not have led me to the crime that I committed. And so almost 17 years ago, I was convicted of felony theft. And the reason for that is because I was in a position where I didn't really know what to do. I had a lot of pride, I had a lot of ego. I was very high up in an organization, but I was about to be homeless. I was about to not have a car to live in, and I had a fourth grader. And at no point did I stop to even think about the risk that I was about to take by the action that I was making. My only thought was, how do I survive and move forward? And that's what I did. And then my conscience got the best of me. And when people talk about, you know, crime happens regardless of race, sex, education, you know, money, it's true. I used to sit in a church choir. I was over our youth group. I was on our women's committee. I was faithful, but life happened. And so I remember sitting in church that Sunday after I had wrote myself a check because I thought that was the way to solve all my problems. And I thought, you know what, God, what have I done? And so my pastor went with me when I turned myself in. And so when I hired an attorney out of Nashville, one of the best attorneys I thought, you know, in that area. And when I went to court, when I went to General Sessions Court, he said, you're going to plead not guilty. I'm like, why? But I'm guilty. He's like, no, you're going to plead not guilty, and we're going to take this to a different court. I was so confused. I was like, no, but I am guilty. Like, I've already confessed to being guilty. Now you're asking me to plead not guilty. So there was not a whole lot of education that came down for the decisions that I made. 2 years went by, fought my court case, trying to get them to reduce my sentence because, again, I'd never been in trouble before. So I was convicted, 6 years probation. But what never happened during this process was my mental health was never acknowledged or recognized or handled. So it took 6 years. If I knew the things that I knew now, I never would have took that sentence, because 6 years, in 5 years, I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to. 2 kids in a private school, owned 3 companies of my own, thought I was doing great. Travis, I married a deputy from a sheriff's office that had 17 years. I always tell people I was the only probationer married to a detective. But things were still crazy in my life, right? Because my mental health was out of control. The next thing I know, I have violated on 3 technical violations. I'm arrested. I'm sitting in jail with individuals that are suffering from mental health issues, suffering from codependency, no education. There's no hope in their lives. Some of them have been sitting in there for pretrial for 8 years. And so I started seeing things from a different perspective. Then I was finally released after I wrote the judge 3 times saying, hey, I'm losing everything I have. Can I get out of this place? And I got out. And then life started happening again. And I attempted suicide twice because my mental capacity could not handle everything I was going through. So I went through therapy and I started to realize that the trauma I had experienced, whether it was from family, whether it was self-sabotage, whether it was mental, physical, and emotional abuse from my husband, my previous husband, watching my brother and my mother take their last breath when they died of cancer, my father committing suicide, all of those things impacted the person I was at the age of 33 and the decisions that I made. And so when I finally figured out who I was and what I was doing, I felt like I was strong enough to fight that violation. And man, I thought I was smart, and Lord knows I wasn't. But I went in there and I was going to fight to get that violation removed. And that day in court, when they offered me another 6 years probation, it was like I was done. And I didn't even hire an attorney to represent me because I thought I was smart enough. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And I asked the judge to put my sentence into effect. I couldn't do it. Mentally, I was spent. And so he said, I'm not really sure you know what you're asking here. So he gave me a 7-day stay, sent me home. And I had a conversation with my daughter. And I was like, at this point in my life, I have to end that chapter. I have to do what I have to do to remove myself from that past. So I went to turn myself in. Well, when I went to turn myself in, I didn't have a warrant for my arrest. So they sent me back home. 5 days later, I was arrested for failure to appear, and because I had asked to put my sentence into effect. So I'm sitting in the jail now, right? I'm there. And I hired an attorney to fight my failure to appear because it was a felony failure to appear. And 6 months went by. I wasn't getting good time. I couldn't earn any extra credits. And this is what he said to me. You might as well just take that failure to appear. It's not going to matter. You already have a felony theft charge. It trumps it. So what I do? Took felony to appear. Knowing that there were cameras inside that jail that saw me walk in that day to turn myself in. My family was there. There were witnesses. But it was presented to me in a way of you can earn your credits and get out sooner if you just take this charge. So I did. So now I sit with not only a violation, but I sit with a felony to appear charge and a felony theft of property. So incarcerated, right? 3 years, I'm sitting on my bed in the women's prison. I was at Bledsoe, I was at MLTC, and I was at the Deborah Johnson K Annex. And for 3 years, I kept thinking, what is God's purpose in my life? Why have I gone through everything I've gone through? And I started watching, again, the women around me and their lack of workforce experience and their lack of education and that codependency and that trauma. And I kept thinking, what can I do with my education and my experience? I was a recruiter and owned a recruiting firm for 17 years. Gibson Guitar was one of my biggest clients. I placed people in China for them. But I couldn't even, how could I take that experience and help others? So I went up for parole. Y'all, if you've never gone up before a parole board, it's an experience you've never lived. And when he told me I had not served enough time to be released and I needed another 18 months, I was like, oh my God, like, for what reason? You know, it's a nonviolent crime. So what I do, I made the best of it. Worked out a plan. What is it that I want to do? How can I help others? Went up for parole again, and he said, we can't release you unless you have a job. I'm like, how the heck am I supposed to get a job out of prison? But I had an advantage. I worked at central office. I took my resume. I passed it out to 86 individuals that day and said, hey, this is between myself and freedom. Can you find me a job? Do you know someone hiring? I was lucky enough to meet someone that was willing to give me a second chance. At that point, Commissioner Tony Parker approved for them to hire me because they were a contractor for the state. So I had a job prior to release. Then all I wanted to do at that point was give back. And so being able to see what is really going on and the rehabilitation that should be inside of our facilities that are not, or asking those questions up front of what happened, what brought you to General Sessions Court today? What was that experience that led you here? Because there might be some abuse or some type of trauma or a mental health issue that led you down the path. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. You just made a mistake. And so for me, reunification happened really while I was sitting in prison. But that's because I allowed it to happen. A lot of other individuals are still struggling with accountability. I finally took accountability. It was the moment that I said to myself, you know what? My ex-husband is not the reason I am here. I am the reason I am here. I made the decision to write that check. Now, how do I move forward? And so, the women and men that we work with now is, we might be teaching them a technology skill. We might be trying to put them in a job making $55,000, $65,000 a year. But if we don't work together as a team or work together with our partners to fix that brokenness that they have, it doesn't matter how much money they make. They're going to find themselves right back into the same position I was in, where I was broken and unstable and had no idea of why I landed where I landed. And so, for me, I think, now it's giving back, but it's also taking a step back and looking at myself and asking, what is my purpose? Where do I belong? Where does my experience take me? How do I stop the Stacys of the world from taking a plea deal for a failure to appear because, hey, you're going to end up getting your credits. That's what you should do. It makes it easier. How do I prevent the Stacys from writing that check and not being able to speak up and say, hey, I'm struggling. I'm about to be homeless. I've got a kid and we're not even going to have a car to live in. So when Judge Bell talks about civil court, all of that stuff led me down the path that I landed on. Not being able to save my home, facing eviction, all of those things led me to that thought process where I wrote that check. And so that's kind of me. That's kind of, where it all happened. And, I don't know. I want to continue figuring out how to stop some of the processes or how to make it how to make individuals understand that sometimes asking that question, what happened, can give us an idea of why that person is in the position that they're in.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Another powerful testimony because she's showing you, and you've seen two clear lenses with 10 years difference in the age of incarceration, and how they both had an opportunity from information or access, the fear, and just the overall experiences. So one had a great life. And Stacey, I will tell you, as a person who's been in and out of, that's where I saw you over there at the annex, as a person who goes in and out, you have more people just like us in our little boxes here that are on the inside than you even realize. Woo. All right, let's go, Ron Johnson. Bring it home, brother.
Wow, they said the first should be last and the last should be first. And I am so thankful, Don, that you and Stacey and Travis and Judge Bell and Dominique, man, I tell you, my heart is with you. First, I just want to say I am just honored to be a part of this conversation because it really seems like a ministry that have just taken place today, learning all the things that we're learning. But one of the things that I say, the enemy is the inner me. It's the thing that we wrestle and fight the most, or the thing that goes on inside of us, especially when they go undealt with. And so, it's like living a full life and never really living. So many people have lived and died and they never showed up because they was never able to tap into the true potentials that they have. I'm Ron Johnson, y'all. I am Mayor John Cooper's Community Safety Coordinator. I was appointed into this position a year and 1 week, something like that ago. Don and I started kind of at the same time, but my history is what tells my now, and also I believe right now is setting me up for my future. I grew up in Memphis. I'm the fifth of 10 boys. Came to Tennessee State on a football scholarship, grew up in the projects in North Memphis, Hollywood. Anybody know much about Memphis will tell you that just that area alone, even in this day and time, is a rough place. So also part of my young life was in South Central LA, 105th and Butlong, as some people will call it over there in that area. And so with all of those experiences, I found myself becoming a part of a set with Barefoot Pookie and a lot of those old heads who were some of the original founders of the Crips in LA and across the country. And I was no exemption. I was one eager young Black guy out of Memphis, thought I knew more than everybody because my mama and daddy allowed me to go to LA. So I came back thinking I knew something and called myself creating a set in North Memphis. to this day still exists, with a lot of my regrets. But at that time, you don't know what you don't know. But being an athlete is a thing that kind of separated me from a lot of my friends. I was an athlete, played football, basketball, and ran track. I got a full scholarship to come and play football up here for Big John Merritt at Tennessee State. In '82, played with some of the greatest football players that Nashville in the country and the world has ever seen, Hall of Famers who are now still good friends of mine. But I was buck wild in a sense, but I was able to use a lot of that energy and a lot of that knowledge, I thought, out on the football field. And so I was able to excel there. But in doing so, I was still dibbling and dabbling. If any of you guys have ever gone to Tennessee State, you know that if you need some weed or just about any drug, even back then, you'd find somebody from Memphis and you was able to get it. And it's the same way now when I talk to the young people over there at Tennessee State. It's unfortunate that that curse is still on a lot of the young people that come in from Memphis that are selling drugs on Tennessee State's campus. I was one who was a football player that was, doing those things. Fast forward, 1985, I was at the top of my game as an athlete. I was one of the top defensive backs in the country. My mom, my dad, and three of my brothers had come to see me play, and I played the greatest game of my life in the hole there at TSU against North Carolina A&T. I had 3 interceptions, 11 tackles. So that Sunday morning when my mom and dad and all of them was getting ready to leave to head back to Memphis, I made a little proclamation to them because I always was a dreamer. That was one of the things that I always did as a young kid. I dreamed big. And I would tell my little friends as the planes would fly over the projects, one day I'm gonna buy my own airplane, I'm gonna fly all over the world, and I'm gonna play pro football. And they laughed at me, because they knew that I was that guy that some people would say you're gonna be. Matter of fact, my yearbook was signed, you most likely to be dead before you're 25, ... Which was unfortunate. It's still in that yearbook that I received. And I know who did it because it was a young lady who I used to bully. I used to pick on her because I liked her and she didn't like me back. That was one of those things, real. So anyway, that day, my mom, dad, and them getting ready to head back to Memphis, I told them that I'm going to, when I get drafted next year in the NFL, I'm gonna buy her a big old house, get her out of the projects, my daddy, whatever you need, I got you. One of the things that I always say, I can't use the excuse of saying I didn't have my daddy. My daddy was my hero. My mama was my shero. They both were two powerful people. My mom had a 6th grade education. My daddy had a 3rd grade education. But to me, he was one of the smartest guys I ever knew because he could take a blueprint and build anything. And I could not understand how and why he was able to do that. But 2 days later, I'm being interviewed by the news and all of that because I had a game that, unlike any that you've seen at TSU. We get a call from Memphis. And so the coach came out to get me and was like, I need you to come to my office with me. So I'm thinking I'm about to do another news interview because, I'd had this particular game. And it was someone calling from Memphis. So I had 2 brothers that was really off the chain. One of them had just gotten out of prison. He had just got done with 10 years he'd spent in prison. And he was he was on heroin and, he was just a little wild guy. So I'm thinking maybe something happened to little man, Herman Johnson Jr., next to the oldest brother. But unfortunately, what happened at that time, it was him calling me to tell me about something that happened. My mom was standing in the door of the projects that we live in, and a woman shot one time at my cousin, them standing in front of our door, and the bullet hit my mom in the heart and killed her. And it devastated me. I was mad at the world. I just had the most amazing opportunity that life could ever give you as an athlete. And so I was done. I was ready to quit everything. I was packed up everything, took it to Memphis. But my mom had these words that she would always say to all of her boys. She would always tell you, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be all right. And when you look at all the conversation that we are having right here, I'm seeing that still exist even in all of our spaces. Everything is going to be all right. So I went home, and the truth of the matter is my brothers and them, we got in a bunch of cars and we went hunting like we were searching for this woman who shot and killed my mom. The unfortunate thing, the woman who killed my mom, her son was one of my best friends growing up. He gets in the car with us to take us to all of his potential family members' house where his mom could be for us to kill his mother. So all of those things, when you think about the psyche of those moments, was something that I have to tell you guys. I know I could not have taken you to do something to my mom, no matter what she done. But he was just that kind of guy. We didn't find her at that time, but I decided I wasn't going to come back to school. But my girlfriend at that time from Trinidad, she came and she said, look, what would your mama want you to do? Because she said to me when I told her that I'm going to buy a big old house, she said she don't care nothing about no big old house, but be my first son to graduate from college, and I would be the happiest mom in the whole wide world. Those were her wishes. And that started to echo even louder in my mind when she said that to me. So I packed everything back up after we funeralized my mom, came back to Nashville, and dedicated the violence that I had going on inside of me out on that football field. And I continued to excel. But keep in mind, all the time that I'm telling you all of these things, I was selling drugs at Tennessee State University, on the campus and throughout the city. Me and a number of my friends from LA. 1986, my senior year, had a great year. Ended up getting hurt, thought everything was over, and still, kept pushing because my dream was still to play in the NFL. In 1988, I got that opportunity. I went and I played with the Atlanta Falcons. So that proclamation that I made had come true. I was there for 2 years on the practice squad, really looking forward to being that guy. Then in 1989, I ended up hanging out with a friend of mine. Some of you guys might know him, Larry Killebrew. We hung out one night when they opened up this very brand new place in Atlanta called Magic City. It stayed out. I never was a drinker, never done any type of drugs, but that night I ended up drinking cognac and stayed out all night. Did not go to sleep, tried to go and finish practice, didn't finish practice, left, thought that I would probably get a fine, got cut, never got another shot at the NFL. And then that's when everything changed. I was mad at the world, felt like the world owed me something and I'm gonna take it back. But also keep in mind, I was still working with young people, just like Dee said. I was working with young people at Martha O'Brien during the summertime, trying to get them basically to do as I say, not as I do. That's the kind of way I think about it now, because you still want to do good, but your actions is one that you hide from others, when you really take the mask off of some of us. If you are wearing that mask, I say check yourself before you wreck yourself, because here we go. I called my friends from LA and I said, it's time for us to turn it up. They came down, a bunch of Bloods and a group of Crips came down from LA at that time and basically cornered the market of Nashville with probably more drugs at that time than we've ever seen. Fast forward to 1994, I ended up being caught up. The carpet was pulled completely away from up under me, and I was charged with 50 kilos of cocaine, 237 pounds of weed. All conspiracy. I never did get caught with anything, but I was facing 40 years to life in prison. At that time, they was giving guys life in prison for drug charges, and they may still be doing that. That was one of the things that now I kind of think is totally wrong. But nevertheless, all I can say that there was something always around me protecting me when I think about people who died around me through shootouts and different things that had happened in that little circle of life. Why was I still here? What was the purpose of me still being here? Why am I not dead just like, some of my friends? Because I easily could have been the one that got hit, but I wasn't. So I ended up going to prison. Couple of charges that I was facing got dropped. They dropped the kingpin charges and they dropped the 50 kilos of cocaine because none of those things was discovered. But what they did discover, they caught them with 237 pounds of weed. I took responsibility for that. And the sentencing in the federal law at that time, I was facing 4 to 8 years. And the judge could have gave me any of those times. What the judge did was he kept saying, I really don't want to sentence you. But my hands are tied. I don't think you should be here. I mean, these are things that I look back and say, wow. But what ended up happening, the judge said, I'm going to sentence you to the lower end and you get back to your family and you do the right thing. Well, when I ended up going to Terre Haute Supermax, in which I shouldn't have been in a Supermax in security prison, as far as I was concerned, because I wasn't no danger, as far as I was concerned. But nevertheless, I got sent to Terre Haute, Indiana. And then from Terre Haute, I got flipped all around throughout that federal system and landed in Memphis. But during that whole time, I kept saying, what am I going to do that's going to be something that's going to make me do something different? Now, I've been doing the work, but I needed to work on the way I was thinking. So what I did, I committed to being a change agent. I started to read, which I hated to do, which I love those books, Just Bill, you have there, because that's one of my favorite pastime now. So if you got some great books that you would like for me to read, to share, I love that, because that's my hobby now, reading and hiking, because I knew that the enemy was the enemy. I was my own worst enemy. It was what was going on inside of me. And so I started to read, but what I started to read was really my tool that I used. It was the Bible. I literally read the Bible front to back, back to front, at least 4 or 5 times during those 4 years of being incarcerated. And then I took on, as if this was my script on how to live. Okay, to me it was, okay, who can I emulate that's in the Bible? Well, it tells you to emulate Christ. I was like, well, I don't know if I could do that, because if somebody slapped me, I'm gonna probably hit them back. And that was my little, even still my thinking. So I was like, you know what? I'm like Peter. I'm gonna take on the Peter type of Christian in a sense, and Peter was that joker who cut your ear off when you come mess with his savior, basically. And then when I got out, I made a commitment. I took on Deuteronomy 30:19. It says, this day I place before you a cloud of witnesses, blessings and curses, life and death. Now choose life so you and your children may live, because I knew that I needed to live for something so much bigger than myself. And it was about my kids. And I took that opportunity to really focus in on making sure that my kids did not go down that road. My sons or my daughters went down that road. From there, I created a program called Choices and the Effects. And that was basically saying that you have a choice, but your choice will have effect, good, bad, or indifferent. I worked that for quite some time. And then what's so amazing now is here I am, fast forward to now, I have been appointed because of the work that I've done over the last 20 plus years of helping young men, especially African-American boys, find their way. And my most important element of doing that is helping them change the way they think. Because when you change the way you think, everything lights up and you become more present. And in doing that, I ended up going back to school. I got my 1 degree, 2 degrees, and then I went and got certified in CBT. I got certified as a CRM, constant resting meditation specialist, to really, really tap into me so I can pour that out into others. And I was blessed back in 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, where President Obama and them invited me because I'd been running a program at the Oasis Center called the Real Program. We had the highest non-recidivism rate in the country at that time, and working with young boys, about 100 and some young boys coming out of the justice system. And it really moved me to know that without a doubt, it matters how we speak, how we walk, and how we talk, because people are watching and people are looking. And I took that on as a true challenge. And then being in this field for as long as I've been, I got approached by the mayor and them last year asking if I could help him with some of the safety issues in our city. One of the things that Dawn and I have done in that process is we've created a village And, you know, I told y'all earlier, I was going to travel all over the world. And those are some of the things that I did. You know, I went through Africa. The only place I haven't been is Asia, but I've been all over Africa. I've been all over Europe. But what I experienced in Africa was seeing how a village works. You hear people say it takes a village to raise a child. But what I'm seeing here, it takes many villages to change a community or a city or a country. And so, yes, it takes a village to raise a child. I saw with my own eyes in Africa how a village really works and operates, the hierarchy and how they work and serve one another, make sure that no one is in need or want. That is what we're trying to do here and have created here in the mayor's office. We've created a village of small grassroots nonprofits. If you're on here and you're not a part of it, I'm pleading with you to become a part of that village, because we have access, we have resources, and we have a little finance. But I always say, don't depend on the finance from the government, you know, but let us help you tap into all the different forms of finance that's out there, because we have created a village and an ecosystem that we're going to show the city and show the country that we're better together. And if we do this together, we can make this doggone city be the beacon that everybody called Nashville, the it city. But we can be the example of what the country can be along the way, because we have learned how to work together. I'm glad that I've been placed in this position, working alongside Dawn and others who are on this call here to do just that. Also, I want to tell you guys that I truly believe what Judge Bell is doing. I mean, she ain't paid me to do none of this. I just need y'all to know that I've been following her for a lot of years. And the things that she do with what I'm talking about is what we need. And I'm totally 100% on that team. And I know without a doubt, with all of us on this here call right here in the village that we got, which is about 170 small grassroots nonprofits, the ones that you deploy out there in those areas where things are happening, we can make a difference and change, y'all. That's my journey. It's so much more, but I'm gonna be quiet and Dawn, let you take it from there.
Wow. This has been an incredible time together. You know what? It was so intense and so informative that we are at the end of our 2 hours. It didn't even feel like it. So what I am going to do is, first of all, thank all of you for being here in this space. Terry Hughes, are you still in the room? Yes. I would like to bring to the stage Terry Hughes, our executive director at the Center for Nonprofit Management, to just kind of close us out, because we didn't get to do the breakouts, but again, we will have more conversations. We will be here. Hannah, I look forward to working with you over there at Project Return, Katie, all of you. But I want to hand it over to Terry to just close us out. And I personally want to thank each and every one of you who are on this panel. I touch all of you in so many intentional and real ways. And I love you all as my brothers and sisters. So Terry, I'm going to let you have the final word. And we thank you, Terry, for creating this space here at CNM to do this real work.
Absolutely, Dawn. Thank you. Oh my goodness. My head is just so full. My heart is so full from these conversations that we've had today, and the stories and the amazing work that's being done, and the vulnerability that all of our speakers showed and shared. I'm kind of blown away. I don't think I have a lot of it's been a very, I think, emotional for all of us, because we understand how much work there is to be done in this space. But what I love about this is we're coming together, we're having these conversations, we're realizing we're not in silos. We're realizing that our work has commonalities. And I just believe that if we keep doing this, and we keep talking, and we keep working, and we keep creating a bigger and bigger village, it's going to be a city pretty soon, Ron and Dawn. I think we got a city. That's amazing. And I know good will come from it. And I'm really excited about how we take these conversations and then really move the work forward together. And this is the beginning. So thank you all for coming to this space. Thank you for listening, if you were a part of the congregation, the audience, sorry, got my church thing going there, part of the audience. And because I know it wasn't just being, we need everybody. We need the listeners, because it's going to make you have action going forward. So, you know, my husband's the preacher, but I feel like I could get revved up here. This is such an important topic. All the speakers, Stacy, Dominic, Ron, Judge Bell, Travis, I'm missing one. Who am I missing?
Jessica from Tennessee.
Jessica. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you so much. You guys are doing amazing work. So, and Dawn, thanks for getting us all together, leading us through the conversation, all the other wonderful Zoom help, Abby J, for sure. She helps wrangle everybody. So Abby Janice, thank you as well. Y'all have a good weekend, a blessed weekend.
Thank you all. Recording will be sent to you, as well as the resources and the chat. Bye-bye, everyone.
Guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
See y'all later.
Bye. Don't forget to go vote.
Yes.
Vote.
D, give me a holler when you get a chance, bro.
Yes. Dominic, go ahead. Y'all exchange information.
Dominique,
Yes, sir.
holler at me, man, when you get a chance. Take my number down right quick. 615
Uh-huh.
977
Okay.
2130, man. Let's hook up.
Okay, we most definitely.
All right,
And
appreciate
Dominic,
you, man.
I put all that stuff in the chat. Did you see it?
Yes, ma'am, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Tell them I sent them.
Okay, I will.
All right.
Thank
All right,
y'all so
y'all.
much.
Thanks, D. Take care
Bye-bye,
now.
everyone.
All right.